Okay, so good afternoon, Pnawn da to everyone who's watching in Wales and around the world. Welcome to Out of Focus and welcome to our funding clinic. So, an important topic that we're going to be talking about this lunchtime, one which we know is actively affecting every single creative professional out there in the world right now. And whilst we don't pretend we're going to have any silver bullets and perfect solutions to impossible circumstances today, what we do hope is that we can offer practical advice and simple suggestions for things that we can all be doing over the next days, weeks, and months to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. I feel really fortunate to be joined by a genuinely esteemed panel. Really looking forward to where the conversation is going to take us over the next 45 minutes. And to everybody listening, I would encourage you to join in. These conversations are always all the more valuable when we could be answering your real questions, the issues you have in your minds, the problems you're facing today. So using the chat function, using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom call, do feed your questions to us and we'll do our very best to answer them all as we go through. I'd like to start though by just taking a moment to ask each of our panelists if they could briefly introduce themselves and the organizations that they're representing here today. And then without further ado, we'll jump straight in and start exploring these difficult but important topics. So perhaps, David, I might come to you first, if I may.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Dave Ball. I'm the Sector Development Manager for Music at Creative Wales. Creative Wales is a internal agency of Welsh Government covering all areas of the creative industries, from film and TV through music, digital media, publishing, and everything else in between as well.
Great, thank you. And Lucy, perhaps I could come to you next.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Bampton. I'm Head of Creative Programme at Help Musicians. Help Musicians, if you're not aware of us, is a UK-wide independent charity which provides musicians with a lifetime of support when they need it most. So we have a broad programme of support which covers creative programme, which I head up and look after the team, and all of our funding programmes to support musicians in terms of developing and sustaining a career, looking across a number of different pillars of activity that musicians undertake. And we also have a health and welfare side to the charity. So that area of the charity exists to support musicians whenever there's any moment of hardship. And over the last few months in particular, we've been doing a lot to support musicians with a bespoke hardship funding avenue as well.
Wonderful. And Aaron, come to you next, if I may.
Pnawn da pawb, good afternoon. My name is Aaron Roberts. I'm a Grants and Information Officer for the Arts Council of Wales. We are the official body that funds and develops the arts in Wales, and we primarily do this through distributed National Lottery and Welsh Government funding. And our funding goes to artists and organisations throughout Wales carrying out programmes of arts-related work. So we support all art forms from music to theatre, dance, visual arts.
Fantastic. And last but by no means least.
I knew you were going to say that. So my name is Asia and I work at the PRS Foundation, and we're a funding body supporting new music and talent development in the UK. So our core aim is to help music creators from all backgrounds realise their full potential. And we do that by giving a variety of different grants, from small grants to artists up to larger grants for organisations. And we focus on timely and responsive investment and meaningful collaborations with a whole host of partners. So we also have our talent development network, of which Focus Wales is one of our talent development partners. So yeah, a huge variety of different grants, from sort of small individual grants for the artists up to larger organizational grants, which I'm sure we'll deep dive into as we go.
Thank you so much. So what's clear straight away to me is that we have, a real breadth of all art forms, all places, all types of support, all types of individuals, which hopefully can be supported through our collective programs here. And we'll be talking about not only the support we can offer, but the support that is offered throughout the wider sector as well as we carry on with these conversations. I want to jump straight in though, because I know that many people watching us now will be attending a funding clinic because they want to know what they can apply for today, what funding's available, what are the eligibility requirements, what sort of projects can they access funding for at the moment, or what sort of grants can they access to help them survive through the extremely difficult circumstances we're in. So perhaps in turn, we can talk about things we have available now, things which we know will become available and open in the near future. And Erin, perhaps I could come to you first, if I may, and talk about what the Arts Council of Wales are able to offer in that regard.
Okay, so at the moment, since the COVID-19 pandemic started in March, we closed all our national lottery funding schemes, which included the small grants fund and the large grant fund. And we redistributed this support primarily as a rescue, recovery and stabilisation support for organisations and individuals, freelancers. So we've run stabilisation support, we've run urgent response funding, and at the moment we're running a cultural recovery fund for organisations. Moving forward, we're hoping to slowly start to reopen our lottery schemes in the new year. So through them schemes, we're hoping to launch a music development fund. But at the moment, I haven't got any further details on that really. However, the most exciting opportunity that I can say we will be doing, and this will be launching in the next few weeks, will be our Launchpad fund that we run in partnership with BBC Wales. So this is a fund of up to £2,000 and it can support bands and artists to do a multitude of different activities, really, from recording to releasing to purchasing new equipment. Yeah, so that's the one to look out for. I haven't got a launch date for the scheme yet, but I think it should be next month. And I think it's going to be a busy one.
And where's the best place for people to keep updated on that? Should they be on the mailing list? Should they follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, if people want to sign up to our newsletter via the website, you can do that. You can select which areas you're interested in. And if you tick funding, you should receive that information. Also, follow Arts Wales on Twitter and also Horizons/Godwellion. And yeah, Horizons will be the main body leading on that fund.
Great. Thanks, Erin. And David, perhaps if I could come to you next with the same question. Are there particular types of funding and support you're able to offer at the moment or in the near future, and to whom?
Yeah, so the bulk of the work that we do is targeted around the grassroots music industry. A lot of people ask what the difference is between what we do and what the Arts Council do, and the very oversimplified version of it is that typically we deal with the industry and the business, and the Arts Council deal with the artists and the creators. There are some very wobbly lines in there. So, for example, things like the Momentum Music Fund, which I'll let Asia talk about more as it's their fund. We put the finance into that at the moment to ensure that Welsh artists get access to that. We've also got other things I know we'll get on later to talking about non-financial support, like a Spotify playlist we do that's there for artists. But in terms of the direct support, the financial support that we've got, it's really focused at the moment on grassroots music venues and on schemes such as the Forte project and the potential expansion of that. We've been talking to Horizons about expanding some of the things that they do and working with mobile artists and things like that. So we're working on a few things sort of behind the scenes. We've done a lot of work with Peast around their app for promoting Welsh creatives, and Peast with working with all the Welsh labels. In terms of right now, our part of the Cultural Recovery Fund, which Ira mentioned, is live at the moment. It's open until the 2nd of October. The bit that's open right now is for the bit that you guys are interested in terms of music, is open for music venues, recording studios, rehearsal spaces, also things like comedy venues, and a few other bits and pieces related to publishing. What we're encouraging people to do through that is to apply and to include the costs of things like their sound engineers and that type of stuff and promoters, so that they can still be paid. So there will be an element of that in there. The other thing that we have got coming up on the 5th of October, when it will open, is a freelancer fund under the Cultural Recovery Fund. Now, under that freelancer fund, it's more likely that there will be an ability through that for musicians and artists and people who freelance in the industry to be able to get access to some finance that way as well. You can find information, it's on gov.wales. If you follow us on Twitter, we're on Welsh Go Creative. We're also at Crayon Humry if you want it in Welsh. And if it won't take long to search through a couple of the previous tweets, and you'll find the links to the Cultural Recovery Fund and all the information about how to apply and who's eligible for what is in there.
Great, that sounds really encouraging. And just to go back to the first part of that Cultural Recovery Fund. So if I'm running a music venue, sitting at home, watching this, thinking that sounds like it could be a good fit for me, what sort of levels of funding are we talking about? Are there any particular eligibility criteria? What's the process to apply? Is there an online form? Do I have a conversation with you first?
A little bit of all of that. So there are two levels to it. There's an under £10,000, which is very quick and easy to go through, and then there's up to 150,000. The form itself is still very straightforward. It's an online form. It doesn't look like most government forms, thankfully. It's nice and quick and easy to get through. If anything, it doesn't ask for enough information, so that's a positive. We've been working really closely with the Music Venues Trust on it all. So if you are a venue and you're looking to apply, feel free to contact them. Lucy and Bev, Sam at the Venues Trust are all aware of what we're doing. I've walked them through the form on a very long Zoom call the other week to go through it, so they're able to talk you through that. But yeah, people can come in and directly to me and ask, or come into our team and ask us if they want to, and we can talk them through. In terms of eligibility, it's really around basic operational costs, both what it's cost you running back to April of last year, and then planning forward to get you to the end of March the coming year. Obviously at the moment that's mostly being based on not being able to open at all, but we can also help with things like some of the reopening costs. With that, there are bits and pieces that you need to do to get the venue ready, and that can both be changes you need to make from a social distancing or PPE or cleaning perspective, through to things like we've been needing to get our toilets redone for a couple of years and we've never had the chance to do it because we've got to shut. You can do that kind of thing as well, and we can help fund through that. So anything you're not sure about, come and ask. But once we get the applications in and it closes on the 2nd of October, as we're going through and assessing, we're going to be talking to people. It's not going to be a tick box whether you're in or not. I'm going to have the joy of sitting and going through every application that we've got. There are already a lot in there. So anything that I'm not sure about, I will be contacting you to ask about, rather than things just being thrown straight out. So it'll be a collaborative process in that sense.
Great, and that's really useful information. And on the freelancer fund side, something I would add to that, and speaking as a freelancer myself, is many creative professionals will be eligible for the self-employed income support scheme, which is open for applications through until the 19th of October for this round. Can cover 70% of your average monthly earnings for a 3-month period. I know has been a major factor in helping me to keep a roof over my head and food on the table since March, and so that'll be relevant to many people too. And if you Google SEISS, you will find the relevant pages on the Gov website. And having been through it, compared to normal HMRC stuff, it was relatively quick and painless. And so for those who've been self-employed for many years, that could be a good avenue to explore as well. Lucy, could I maybe come to you next, and you could tell us about some of the current funding and support that's coming through Help Musicians?
Absolutely. If I start with the fund that we have open at the moment, it's a bit of a niche fund. It's our Peter Whittingham Jazz Award. It's a £5,000 award which looks to support emerging jazz talent from anywhere in the UK. And I should say anywhere under the very broad and exciting, diverse banner of jazz. So that's open at the moment. It's a project fund. So we're looking for applications that demonstrate quite a mixed approach to a project. So it might be something which which allows a musician to undertake some recording. It could also have an educational focus. It can be looking at creating a body of work and actually collaborating across the art form as well. So details are on the Help Musicians website, Google Peter Whittingham Jazz Award, and it'll take you to the relevant pages to apply. That fund is open until 5 p.m. on Monday, the 12th of October. And coming up in the autumn, opening, I would say over the course of the next few weeks, we will reopen our flagship integrated holistic fund, which is called Do It Differently. So that is a fund. When I talked earlier about the kind of pillars of the work we do in the creative program, it's the fund which looks predominantly at what I tend to call the kind of bare bones music making elements of a musician's career. So it's a £3,000 grant, which is available to support recording, release, time to create, time to pivot, maybe an existing plan that a musician may have had this year to do with an album release. And we've worked a lot over the last few months with that fund to make sure that the criteria is tweaked to kind of reflect the time in which we are all living and finding ourselves in now. So it's a fund that we've run for about 2 years now, and it used to accept applications for touring, but we've kind of toned those down for these rounds. So that fund, as I say, will reopen. It's an application-based form, although you can apply by video within that application process. And the other side to the funding is a wraparound of support, which provides a day's worth of business advice as relevant to the project that the musician wishes to undertake. We've got a selection of business advice services, which details of all of the session topics will be published along with the guidance over the next couple of weeks. But it covers, those sessions can cover everything from understanding label strategies, IP, business planning basics, social media strategies, fan engagement, the whole raft of business advice that will help musicians take their projects forward really successfully. And we also attach to it a health and well-being sort of platform, if you like, at the moment. We work in partnership through our health and welfare provision with the British Association of Performing Arts Medicine, often referred to as BAPAM. So it's a BAPAM series of online webinars, access to one-to-one assessment if that's required, and lots of resources and toolkits around maintaining health and well-being broadly, but also with a real focus on isolation and mental health being a really big part of that as well. So it's a really fantastic program which offers that, it's both the kind of cash to get on with the vital business of being a musician, and also some of that wraparound support which can just help musicians to really think about what they can do differently, how to retain their independence, how to pivot themselves. I say that word a lot now, it's become the buzzword. But how to do that, how to kind of think differently about their music in the current climate, and actually to be able to respond, I think, probably over the next 6 to 12 months with albeit probably more changes and more uncertainty going forward. So it's a really impactful fund. The other fund that we will look to relaunch this year, again over the course of the autumn, opening probably in October again, is our Transmission Fund. That fund is a learning and professional development fund. It's open to applications, again, from musicians of all walks of life, all genres, all parts of the UK. We would love to see more applications from musicians based in Wales. And it's, as a professional development fund, it's a really broad fund. It's very much individual led. It's about thinking about creative skills and soft skills, professional development areas, which will again help that musician to develop their career, possibly take their career into a new avenue or a new direction. And in order for that to be a sustaining activity, we've supported lots of really wide variety of activity through that fund, everything from attending masterclasses to songwriting camps to intensive learning with a producer to understand how to use a particular piece of software. So that fund is available. That will be, we'll accept applications ranging from £500 to £1,500 for that one. And as with others have said, you know, we've had a you know, a really monumental year, as have so many of us. And so we're just getting our ducks in order to be able to do these funds again in the autumn. So the best way to keep in touch with us and to keep up to date would be to look at our socials. We're Help Musicians UK on Twitter, Help Musicians on Facebook and Instagram, and also to keep abreast of our website. We do have a creative program newsletter, which we send out monthly, but we tend to send that towards the end of the month. So please sign up to that, but you'll probably get more up-to-date notifications from socials. Our funding is available to all musicians who are over the age of 18, who demonstrate a commitment and an ambition towards sustaining a career, can demonstrate an element of track record. And I always say an element of track record because it's different in different genres and different types of music industry. So we are really open to that. We ask across all of our funds, we ask for an explanation and a budget to do with the activity that you're asking us to fund. We ask you kind of why now? Why is this the moment for you to undertake this course of action? And ultimately, what impact do you wish to see it have on your career and your livelihood going forwards? All of our applications are internally assessed, and then we convene an external panel. So it's not just kind of Help Musicians that make the decisions. We bring industry experts, and we bring those experts from around the country and ensure that we have a really good mix of genre representation in those as well. So those are the two things to look out for. Also from the perspective of hardship, I should say our health and welfare provision is open all year round, 365 days a year for any kind of health crisis or kind of intervention that that you might have, whether that's a broken bone or if you're looking for counselling, you can also contact our Music Minds Matter service. That's a 24-hour listening service. Although it doesn't provide cash, it can give you access to kind of CBT and other avenues. And we also have had our hardship funding, which I mentioned before. That at the moment has been designed alongside the self-employment support, but we're looking at what that looks like over a much longer period of time next year. So again, that's the best thing to do to look at the hardship funding is to have a look at the website and to contact us. Although you're very welcome to apply by application form, we love hearing from musicians. So we love hearing your ideas, your projects. We run one-to-one surgeries, so you can call us, you can book one of those sessions and speak to myself or another member of the team to help you kind of shape your application and make the most of it.
Great, that's a really comprehensive description of the many things Help Musicians do. It's a really simple, easy to follow website as well. So I'd recommend people go to helpmusicians.org.uk, and the funding wizard on there is a really cool little tool for finding funds that may meet your needs outside of what Help Musicians can offer as well, and just get the creative juices flowing about where support might lie. We've had a question for you, Lucy, from Rebecca, just asking when the Do It Differently Fund will be taking applications.
I can't tell you that exactly, but it is something we're talking about this week. We've been just plotting out our timelines. I would expect it to be open in October, certainly before the end of October. And And the reason, part of the reason I can't be definitive yet is to do with our timelines, but we will ensure that we are able to make these grant commitments within this year. So we're kind of working back from our last moment in the year where we're able to kind of financially recognise our grants, which will be kind of the second week of December. So we really hope to be able to get it open, as I say, the first couple of weeks of October. It's likely to be open. We've run 2 rounds of a kind of COVID refreshed Do It Differently this year. Each of those rounds have 3 rounds actually. We're just on our 3rd round now. Each of those rounds have been open for about 4 weeks. We are thinking about whether we will hold it open for slightly longer for this final round, being the last one of the year. But either way, yeah, mid-October is our kind of stop date. If we don't do it before then, we're not giving ourselves or musicians enough time.
No, and by following all of those places you described on the website and online, people can make sure they don't miss that window opening. You also touched upon lots of things regarding non-financial support. We're going to save a bit of time for at the end. And I would encourage folks, if you have questions, do keep them coming in, and we'll make sure that we can answer these as we go along. The question that's just come in from JJ now, is this a question for Lucy or for everybody? I think I'll put it's probably relevant to everybody. So in that sense, I will share it. And what I will do with permission, JJ, is just come to Asia first, just to briefly outline PRS's funding and support, and then come back to your question there. So could you outline what the PRS Foundation are doing, both in terms of funding for the organisations watching, as well as the funding for music creators?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the PRS Foundation, we run a huge variety of different grant schemes throughout the year, and these range from early career support to all career levels. And then we have a category within our funding that we call Next Steps. And Dave's already touched on the PPL Momentum Fund that I'll talk a little bit about later. And through these schemes, we fund over 500 different grants each year, and that's roughly split 50% for organisations and 50% to new music creators. And our funding is for the support of performance, promotion and creation of new music. And in the foundation, new music, we mean those that are writing their own music, its original compositions. Just to sort of clarify, because I know that sometimes new music can be a bit of a question mark when we say it. And so our grants vary in size from £500 up to £25,000. And around half of that, as I said, goes out to organisations who run their own programmes to support new music on a grassroots level. In terms of what our sort of key funds that we have open at the moment, so we have our open fund both for music creators and for organisations, which is open at the moment with a deadline of the 5th of October. And we say that for applications for that, you'll receive a decision within a 10-week turnaround time. So a decision by the 15th of December on your application. We also have Women Make Music open at the moment, which is specifically for women and minority gender applicants to support their artist development. The Open Fund for Music Creators and Women Make Music are grants available of up to £5,000. And the Open Fund for organisations is grants of up to £10,000. And I'll talk a little bit about each of them as we go, and I'm sure there'll be questions. The other fund we have open at the moment is our Hitmaker Fund. Now, Hitmaker is a fund that is specifically to support behind the scenes creatives, so songwriters and producers in their behind the scenes activity. So, for example, if you were a artist producer who wanted to make your own album, that would not be eligible for the Hitmaker Fund. Hitmaker is specifically for behind the scenes activity, and that is grant support of £5,000 to £10,000. And for those producers and songwriters that can demonstrate that they are at a tipping point within their career, they've got a significant track record and they need some support either in purchase of new equipment, international songwriting camps, time to create, just to take them into that next step to level them up to become more sustainable in their career. The other sort of flagship fund that we have that isn't open at the moment, but we should, and I'm sort of mimicking the conversation of we should be opening it sort of late September, early October, is our PPL Momentum Fund. So we do work with the lovely Dave at Creative Wales on the PPL Momentum Fund, and this is for artists who are at a significant tipping point. And Momentum can offer up to £15,000 for artists who are at this crucial tipping point, and can fund recording, touring within the UK, marketing and promotion, and is again for those artists that need to take that step, that are just that little step away and need a little bit of support to get them over the cliff face, if that makes sense. I know the cliff face is a horrible way of saying that. I'm sorry. I don't know, should I go into each of the different funds? I feel like I'm sort of talking like
I think we'll go into that in a moment, and I'm going to jump into another question that's come through here.
Yeah, of course.
The first thing that's been really useful already is an overview there. And I know if I was listening to this as a musician or anyone working in the music industry, it is reassuring to know that there is still a wide variety of financial support able to be offered even now, to allow people to get on with creative work. It's not all funds to hold on by your fingernails until it's all over. There is still funds to do things. And to be creative and to produce work and to be proactive even in these circumstances. A question that came in a few moments ago for everyone, perhaps directly relevant to David and Erin and then indirectly to everyone, is if a project is based in Wales, but the person running that project and the organisation running that project is based in England, will that make you potentially ineligible for Arts Council Wales or Creative Wales funding? Perhaps I could come to you first, Erin, on that.
Yeah, so with our general lottery, as an individual to receive support, you need to be based in Wales. As an organisation, you can be based in the UK as long as the activity takes place in Wales.
Is there a percentage of activity that has to take place in Wales, or is it all activity?
No, all activity. The other way is, yeah, with touring activity, for instance, we can fund, say, up to 10% of touring outside of Wales. That's primarily for theatre, for music. Obviously, we understand it's different, but yeah, for organisations, if you're based in England and the activity is in Wales, you can apply to us.
Great. And if anyone's not sure, are they able to, is there a point of contact where people can ask questions, speak to somebody, to get advice on this?
Yeah, if anyone wants to ask us any questions, the email address is grants@arts.wales.
Nice, easy one. I always like nice a short email address.
Grants@arts.wales. Send them over.
And likewise to you, David, is there any eligibility requirements around English-based organisations applying for Welsh-based funding there?
Not really, no. I mean, the key thing for us is that that the money is going to benefit Wales at the end of the day. So, I mean, as an example, with the stuff that we're looking at now with the venues applying into the Cultural Recovery Fund, we have got a couple here in Cardiff where the venue is operated by somebody who's based outside of Wales, but the venue is here. Obviously, the focus for us right now is making sure that as many of our venues in Wales survive and are able to reopen and thrive when they're able to. So with things like that, we're happy for that. I mean, the key thing for us is that the long-term benefits are to Wales, and as long as the venue or the studio or whatever is here, then we're happy with that. And if on an artist's point of view, for us, with something like Momentum, when to qualify as a Welsh artist is someone who's based in Wales. So, for example, a while ago, we had a band called Icy Rivers who received support as a Welsh artist in that. The girls are not Welsh themselves, but they're based out of Carmarthenshire, and therefore they qualified.
Great. And I can only sort of re-emphasize for everyone watching and listening that if in doubt, ask. And my experience of funding organisations, and hopefully your experience watching today, is they're not populated by people in, pinstripe suits with clipboards who are trying to catch you out. They're full of people who are as passionate about the industry as you are and will want to work with you to help you directly or find a way of finding someone who can help you indirectly. We're all on the same team, and so do contact people, do talk to them. Overwhelmingly, people will want to help you. We've got a question from Rebecca. This is for you, Asia. So the Hitmakers Fund, is this a fund for songwriters only writing for other people? Would a songwriter writing their own music for their own album be eligible to apply?
So the Hitmaker Fund is specifically for, as I mentioned, behind the scenes activity. So if you were a songwriter writing your own album, which is your own album as an artist, you wouldn't be eligible, but you would be eligible for funding through the Open Fund for Music Creators or through the PPR Momentum Fund, depending on what your project is and where you are in your career. But the Hitmaker Fund was specifically set up because there was a lot of support for music creators as artists, but there was not that much support for those working behind the scenes in terms of in the studio, writing the tracks for other people. So that's why it is that specific.
Great, and I think that's really useful. And again, Rebecca, and to all others who are thinking the same thing, I think many people watching, and the nature of the beast in the creative industry is most of us don't fit neatly into one box. And lots of people will think, well, actually, I'm kind of all of those things. And if you're unsure which strand you're the best fit for, I think again, reach out, have that conversation, and those people on the call with us today, and lots of other people too, will be there to help you. So Rebecca's particular example, she goes on, is I am a songwriter who has attended and been invited to songwriting camps in New York, but as I am writing songs for my own album, would that make me ineligible? And I think from what you're saying, yes for this fund, but not for the wider funds in general.
And one thing I would say, just specifically for Rebecca, is we also run a fund called the International Showcase Fund, which at the moment isn't accepting applications because of the current state of affairs. But that is specifically both, you can apply through that to attend songwriting camps as a writer, but just, if that makes sense. So it's not open at the moment just because of the current situation, but it's something to keep an eye on, and we're hoping to reconfigure it and announce what we're going to be doing with it very soon.
Thank you for that. And Rebecca shares her thanks with you too in the Q&A. And we have about 10 minutes to go. So anyone thinking about questions, please do share them. It's a great opportunity to hear directly from the experts when we're all on the call live. And one thing that I'd like to talk about with everyone next, if I may, is you've all given us a good sense of some of the types of grants and financial support that are out there able to apply for at the moment. But I know for many of us, this is a stressful time. Lots of us will be having sleepless nights. Lots of us will not know what to do first. And I know I have days like that. I'm sure I'm not the only one, where you wake up and it just all feels too much. And from the experience of those you've been speaking to, helping, supporting over the last 6 months, what would you recommend that people do first, and what sort of support can you offer to them in doing that? It's a tricky question. So would anyone like to have a go at that one first?
Yeah, I don't mind having a go.
Great.
I think we've already touched upon it, but sometimes it's not the financial support that people need, but it's just to speak to someone and to just have some development advice, or just being able to point someone in the right direction of a network or an organization that can help support them. And that's why it's really important to get in touch and just say where you are right now, where you need advice. And we're in touch with a lot of organizations and a lot of networks, so we can always help signpost people to the right places. We might not have the answers, but people that we work with, we're in collaboration, might have the answers.
I think that's really sound advice, and I think the physical distance that's been put between us all in the last 6 months is, for lots of us who are freelancers, stuck us in the spare bedrooms, Exhibit A, and it can be quite isolating, especially when we're used to normally traveling all over the country or all over the world. And the first step for me has been to make sure I don't forget that I can still speak to people. And there are lots of ways of me speaking to them, even if I can't physically go and hang out with them. And just being able to speak to people and share experiences has been a way of helping me to at least begin to get my head around what I might be able to do and keep my cool. And if you're not sure where to start with the people who are on this call and allow them to speak to you and help you meet other like-minded people. Lucy, when you were speaking earlier, you talked about lots of the non-financial support that musicians can offer. Could you tell us a little bit more about some of that now?
Sure. And can I jump in on the last question as well?
Of course,
I
please.
think just to support that answer previously and what you said, I think having also kind of spent part of my life as an artist applying for funding, I think it can be quite overwhelming. You mentioned our funding wizard. So from a research point of view, you know, kind of do your research, get a feel of the funding that's available. But I tend to kind of advise people not to, it's a kind of mentality to take into it in a way. So rather than kind of chasing a fund and kind of looking at it and thinking, right, how do I write this application form for this fund? I think what we tend to say, and I'm sure other funders can only agree, we want to hear from you in terms of what you want to do. So being really clear about what your project idea is, having an idea of whether or not it might fit into a funder's kind of particular criteria or a particular funding principle, that's great, but we can also do that with you. So I think that I always tend to say, you know, it's like the elevator pitch. If you can kind of summarize in verbal words or in writing on a one pager what it is that you want to achieve, being able to convey that to a funder quite in one of our funding advice sessions, because they are only kind of 20 minutes to half an hour, maybe max. We can then say, oh, what you've just said, that would really fit we have another fund called Fusion, which supports creative collaborations which bring music into other art forms and other disciplines. And there tends to be a kind of crossover with a lot of funding anyway. So having that conversation with the funder, I think, is a really, we're not, you know, thank you for saying we're not intimidating, because we are, you know, I'm in my living room and I am desperate to speak to people and hear what people are trying to do. So yeah, reach out to us, let us help guide you. And then I kind of always say, you know, spend some time on it. Again, many of us have deadlines. They feel like they need to be chased. But again, I think taking time to really develop an application. One of the things I always say is, like, give it to your neighbor. Maybe don't go to your neighbor with social distancing. But give it to somebody who maybe isn't close to your work. And if they can understand what it is you're trying to achieve, then so will our teams be able to. And secondarily, go back to the point about Help Musicians support. So obviously a number of our funds do attach a kind of non-grant, non-cash offer within them, but we're also doing a lot behind the scenes to think about how that works more broadly. So obviously it's something which is attached to our funding currently, and we're looking at how we bring together the people resource of the industry in many different ways. So we're looking at creating a kind of resource library, you know, a kind of signposting place where it's a repository for all sorts of things, whether that's a toolkit or a guidance document to writing a really great budget, or it might be events like this, which we would have hosted kind of on a platform, and you'd be able to kind of dip back into them. Everything from, you know, thinking about networks and conferences. We're also working internally at the moment. We're piloting a lot around mentoring. So we have an ambition to create a kind of mentoring program across the UK. And again, thinking about that sense that often you need to talk something through with somebody. And we can do that to a degree, but also you may need to speak to somebody in the sector with really specific guidance, really specific planning in place. So there's a lot around kind of mentoring and coaching, and obviously that attaches itself quite well into, you know, kind of there's a moment where you need to kind of answer a question, move in a direction, reflect on whether or not that's worked, but equally, you know, just that connection, and particularly at the moment, that connection with somebody can really improve your well-being. And so we're also kind of really ensuring that I tend to say both sides of the charity, but more and more actually our health and welfare and the creator program are thinking together about how we provide that full wraparound, you know, that kind of really individual tailored response to a musician, which is over and above. We also work in partnership with people like organisations like Music Support. So we've been helping Music Support to deliver their mental health first aid training. to the music industry over the last 6 to 12 months. We're also supporting the Thrive app, which is a really great resource to have a look at, which is again kind of around mental health and well-being. And yeah, lots more will be developed over the coming months, really, because it's critical time.
And I know we're throwing lots of names of things at people, but this session will be available after we talk. So don't worry if you're missing things. You can watch it again, Google these things, follow them up. We're coming into our last 5 minutes now, and a few questions are coming through. So I'm going to fire a few of these questions at our other panelists. I think this would be a question firstly for you, David. So where do charities sit with current funding? So for example, if a cancer charity is based in Wales and has artists that want to do concerts or streams in locations in Wales, can they be part of a project? Can a non-arts organisation lead an application, or do they need to come in as a partner?
They can. What I would say is the fund that we've got open at the moment is specifically for venues, rehearsal spaces and studios. However, one of the questions that may not be this question, but one of the questions we have been asked by some of the venues is that a venue that is set up as a community interest group or as a registered charity, they can still apply as well. It doesn't have to be registered as a business, as long as it is a venue which is putting on original music as the majority of its bookings, then we're happy to take it. But yeah, I think come and let me know what the specific instance is, and we'll happily look at it. I mean, to echo a little bit what Lucy was sort of suggesting there, everything that we've done with our funding for the last year or two has been based on people coming to me and saying, what we really need is this. If we have quite a few people asking for it, we can look to set up a specific fund for it. If it's just a one-off thing, there's no reason we can't do that either. So yeah, come through to us and let us know. creativewales@gov.wales is our mailbox. Send us an email with the exact issue and the exact question in there, and I'll happily take a look at it and come back to you.
And I think that again reiterates what we were saying earlier about, if in doubt, ask. Because people will, across the board of everyone on this panel and more, will want to find a way of making things possible. Roxanne, I'm going to come to your question in a moment. Before I do, I'm going to come to you, Asia, for this one, if I may. I know that everyone will have their own application processes here, but the general principles are usually broadly similar. And the question is from Rebecca, any top tips on writing a successful application? Any key elements that are desirable to a judging panel? These are things we probably all get asked quite often. And I'm afraid I don't have time to come to you each in turn. So Asia, with permission, I'll come to you on behalf of all of us for any key things people should be focused on.
Nod along as I say all of these things. But so in terms of PRS Foundation specifically, all of our applications are assessed by an independent industry expert and an internal member of staff who's a specialist in funding. From those assessments, then we have a shortlist, and a much like Lucy at Help Musicians, there's then a panel assessment where we also have industry experts who assess your application. At the foundation, our applications are equally weighted in terms of their scores on the musical quality and the quality of the project. So those are given equal weighting in terms of the way that they are assessed. So first top tip from me is submit your best musical examples. And if you are applying for a new album, a new project that you don't necessarily have like high quality recorded examples of yet, send us demos. We want to hear what the project's going to sound like. We want to get excited about what's coming next. Another tip on that is don't give us submissions that are 6 years old. We want to know where you are now. We want to know how you sound now, because that's what we're going to get excited about, and that's what we're going to be funding. In terms of the project, I think Lucy's already touched on this, but what will you be doing? Who will you be doing it with? How will you be doing that? And how is that going to support your development, either creatively or in terms of your career? One of the biggest things in terms of feedback that we give to people is, if you tell us, I want to work with a PR company, who is that PR company? What specific thing are they going to do for you? How is that going to increase your audience? Where is that going to get your name out to that you haven't been to before? And then how is that going to take you on that next step, that artist development journey? So detail, detail, detail. And I hate saying this, but like, we don't need your life story when we're talking about, tell us about your track record. We want to hear what you've done, what successes they've been, how that's going to, tell us the story of your career and how this specific project and this specific activity is going to take you to where you want to be. So specificity at all times.
I think that's very salient advice. I'm so sorry I can't come to all our panelists on this, but I don't think there's anything. I certainly don't disagree with the word you've just said. I've helped lots of artists with applications over the years, and no matter who they've been applying to, the key things for me have been keep it simple. Earlier on, we talked about having somebody neutral who can give you feedback. I often start by saying, talk to me as if I'm a 5-year-old. And once you've explained it to me like that, how much more complicated does it really need to be? Usually the answer is not much. I think the second thing is not being afraid to write in your own voice. You don't have to write it as if you're your own accountant. Don't feel the need to fall into jargon, lots of technical terms, too many words. Keep things simple, keep things authentic. We know that we're funding artists. We expect our applications to be written by artists. We know how to read them. And like we've been saying all along, if in doubt, ask. We're not trying to catch people out. If you're not sure of something, it's our job to make it easier for you to understand. Roxanne, I saved your question till last because we're almost out of time, but I think it's one which many people watching will share the sentiment and appreciate the advice. So Roxanne said to us, what if you have only just finished studying and you're really unclear? And some people will be unclear because they've just finished studying. Some will be unclear because the whole world's been turned upside down. Some will be unclear because they're feeling now is an opportunity to move into a completely new area of the creative industries, or the changing economies forcing them to move into a new area. So for those who are completely unclear, if we think about the many things we've touched upon over the last 45 minutes, is there any one thing each of our panelists would recommend that Roxanne and the others listening do first? Dave, if I can come to you first, if I may.
Yes, I mean, I think it comes back again to, I don't know, we've been sort of hammering the point all afternoon so far, but it's to talk to us. And, I think what I would suggest for someone in that situation where you're just coming out of university or college or school or wherever it might be, and you're thinking you want a career in the music industry, you can come to one of us and say, I think this is the kind of thing I want to do. Who should I be speaking to? What sort of help is out there? That type of thing. I always say to people that, to me, regardless of the job title and everything else that they give us, the most important thing any of us do is signpost people around to the right places. I might not be able to help you with something I've got in my sort of imaginary toolkit, but I can probably point you towards someone who can. I've had people who, bloggers who are aspiring to write PR for bands and signposted them to people and all sorts of things like that, which, it's not technically what I do, but that it all works towards that wider infrastructure of having a successful industry. So yeah, pick one of us and send us an email, basically, and we'll point you at the right one if you've picked the wrong one.
And Erin, in a single sentence, same question to you. The one thing people can do first.
Pretty much what Dave said. But yeah, don't panic either. If you've just graduated, don't panic. There's plenty of time.
Asia, going around the houses, one thing.
I'd say exactly the same. I'd also be like, don't worry about not knowing, and don't think that there is a clear path that everyone else seems to know and they're just going about their business. I think it's a very uncertain time. Things are incredibly uncertain for everyone here. And I would completely echo what Dave said. Just reach out and we'll signpost you somewhere. But also don't believe that you have to know. There is a certain amount of experimenting and trying and talking, and the only way you'll figure it out is through having these conversations. You know, it's not, you don't get on the music career ladder and work your way up. You have to test and you have to try and you have to collaborate. That's what I would say. Don't panic. Yeah.
Great to finish with some consensus. Lucy, we're going to have a full house. What's the one thing we should be focusing on first?
Exactly what everyone said. And actually what you said, Adrian, I'm still figuring out what I'm doing. More than 15 years after graduating, and I've done so many different things. So I think it's a really difficult time to be saying embrace whatever happens, but you know, opportunities present themselves, and if you can, go with it, you know, and when you do, if you can, and when you do, I think it's really important to just take stock actually, and just to look back and think, what did that do? What did I learn from that? What would I do differently if I did it again? You know, I kind of, you know, I've sort of never stopped thinking that, whether that's in my day job or whether that's in my own practice outside of work. It's something that you embed, and I think that's sort of where creative energy maybe resides and kind of thrives. You know, it's a really difficult time, but there's a bit of comfort to be taken in. A silver lining is looking at kind of all the amazing progressions that may come out of this time. And I think the other thing I would say is, I talked too much and now I've forgotten what I was going to say. Well, actually, you're doing it. To keep doing things like this, keep dabbling into kind of how you can find out more, and you know, you'll get a different set of voices, different set of advice, and just kind of try and absorb it and find your path in it. Really, it's about being authentic and about making the most of what happens around you for you.
I think that's a lovely note to end on. The best thing you can do is come to Out of Focus. And on that note, I know lots of people will have places they need to be at 2 o'clock, so we'll bring things to a close there. Everyone who's been watching, thank you so much for your time and participation. You can watch this again and continue engaging online when this is posted later. A huge thank you to our panel for being so generous with their time and expertise today as well. I've massively appreciated it. Hopefully I'll get to speak to you all soon, and hopefully you'll be inundated with questions and requests from all those who've been watching around the world. So thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay well, enjoy the rest of the event, and hopefully our paths will cross again in the future.
Thank you very much.
Well,